I want to look at two passages together this morning. The first is going to come from Proverbs chapter 1. The second is going to come from Matthew chapter 18. And so if you want to open to those two texts, you might hold your finger in Matthew 18. We'll get there in just a moment. But I want to start with Proverbs chapter 1. We're going to reference both of those texts in the course of our lesson together today. Proverbs chapter 1. Read with me beginning in verse 8. Solomon says, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Indeed, they are a graceful wreath to your head and ornaments about your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, 'Come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, even whole as those that go down to the pit. We shall find all kinds of precious wealth. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Throw in your lot with us. We shall all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path. For their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood. Indeed, it's useless to spread the net in the eyes of any bird, but they lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. So are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of his possessors." Now go with me, if you would, to Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18 and verse 1. Matthew writes concerning Jesus and the disciples, "At that time the disciples came to Jesus saying, 'Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' And he called a child to himself and set him before them and said, 'Truly I say to you, unless you're converted and become like little children, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever then humbles himself as this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever caused one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it is better for him that a heavy millstone be hung around his neck, and that he be drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks, for it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come. But woe to that man through whom the stumbling block comes.'" So, why these two passages together? I mean, what do they have in common? What is Solomon saying that Jesus is also saying here in Matthew chapter 18? I want to suggest to you that both of these passages teach us something about minding the company that we keep. Both of them say something to us about the importance of how we are influenced and about how we influence others. Do you see the influence context that's in both passages? In Proverbs chapter 1, Solomon is warning his son about the people that he hangs out with. He's saying you need to be careful about who you run with, because you're going to be affected by the company that you keep. And so if you hang around with people that are part of a gang, then you're going to act like a thug. Don't act like a thug. And if you don't want to act like a thug, don't hang around thugs. Because if you hang around thugs, you're going to act like them, right? And in Matthew chapter 18, Jesus is saying, don't be a thug. Be careful about how you influence other people. Look behind you, because there's someone who's watching. There's someone who is affected by your behavior. And he uses a little child in that context in order to make his point. The disciples ask him, "Who's greatest in the kingdom?" And he brings a little child in front of him and sets the child before them and said, "This is the picture of greatness in the kingdom. It's to be like this little child." And you need to not only learn to behave like him, but you need to be careful about influencing ones like him. Not just how you influence little children who are looking up to you, but how you influence God's children who are looking up to you. You need to think about how your behavior affects other people. And if you are a stumbling block, then it would be better for you if God would tie a big millstone around your neck and someone took you out into the middle of Lay Lake and threw the stone overboard. And you with it? He said it'd be better to drown in the midst of the sea than to be someone who causes someone else to stumble. And so both passages teach us something about minding the company that we keep, being thoughtful of how we're influenced by other people, and being thoughtful about the influence that we exert. I want to talk about 4 principles then that pertain to my influence and to how I'm influenced. 4 principles that have to do with minding the people that minding the company that we keep. I don't know about you, but my spirituality has throughout my life been impacted to a great deal by who I'm hanging out with. Is that so for you? I mean, who is my friend and who is not my friend? Who are my intimate associates and who are not? Who are my confidants and who are not my confidants? Who do I turn to for wisdom? Who do I turn to for help? Who am I hanging out with in my social time? Who am I purposing to be around? Those all influence me. They affect my dreams. They affect my ambitions. They affect the goals that I set. They affect my morality. They affect my relationship with God. And it would be, you can overgeneralize things, but I don't know that the single most important factor in my spirituality from day to day, I don't know that it's not the company that I keep. It has a big influence on how I behave. And thinking about how I influence others is another big factor that affects my spirituality and affects my walk. And so it's a subject that merits my looking at. It's a subject that merits my thinking, minding the company that I keep. So what are some principles that pertain to that? The first thing that I want you to notice that's present in both passages is this mandate. It's implied in what Solomon says, it's implied in what Jesus says, and the mandate is this: remember who you are. Remember who you are. In whatever context you find yourself, whatever group of people you're around, you need to remember who you are. When you leave home, you need to remember who you are, and you need to let that identity define who you hang with and how you behave in all the different settings in which you find yourself. And so look at how Solomon addresses that back in Proverbs chapter 1. He says in verse 8, "Hear who? Hear my son. Hear, my son, your father's instruction. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. Indeed, they are a graceful wreath to your head and ornaments about your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent." He is charging his son and will charge his son over and over again in these opening chapters, all the way through chapter 9. He's going to remember his son over and over again of their relationship. He's going to remind him that you're Solomon's son. Be wise, Solomon's son. Remember who you are. Remember that you represent me. Remember that when folks look at you, they see me and they see your mother. Remember who you come from. Remember what family you're connected to. Remember that as you go out into the world. And if sinners invite you to come along and do things you shouldn't do, remember who you are so that you behave in the different circles that you find yourself in. In Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 18, He's reminding us of who we are. We are children. And so we're called upon in that context to act like a child. Now, not act childish, but to act like a child with regard to our relationship with God. Be like a child in your humility. Be like a child in your dependence on God. Be like a child in your innocence. Be like a child in how you treat others. Be harmless. Be like a child in all. Remember who you are. You are a child of God. And so act like that. You're a child of God, and so you look at who you're influencing and how you're affecting them. You don't want to cause someone else to stumble because you are a child of God. And so don't hurt other people. Be careful how you influence and how you're influenced by others. Do you ever forget who you are? Do you ever get around the wrong associates and pretty soon you're not talking the way that you know to talk? You're now talking the way the world talks. Do you ever get around the wrong company and you stop thinking the way that you ought to think? You start entertaining the world's values rather than entertaining God's values. I need to remember who I am. I am a disciple. That means I follow Jesus. He's the one who blazes the path for me. He's the one that defines who I am. I am, Jesus said as in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 and verse 16, you are the light of the world. Now, if I'm supposed to be light, if I'm supposed to be shining God's light, I shouldn't be like darkness, should I? I mean, I represent the kingdom. I represent His light. I need to illuminate. I need to shine. Shine, Christian, shine. God has wired us to shine. He has called us to shine. He's shown us how to shine. And so we need to shine as sons. We need to shine as disciples. We need to shine as light. Remember who you are. And if you're hanging around folks that cause you to forget, you need to hang around other folks, don't you? Because we need to remember who we are. Number 2, watch where you're going. Watch where you're going. It's easy when we find ourselves in the wrong company to not think about where this is headed. You go on an adventure. Let's go off down this trail. We don't know where it's. Let's see where this goes. Let's go over this hill. Let's see what's on the other side. Let's go across this lake. Let's see what we find. Let's go into this cave and see where it heads. See where it leads. And one of the things that Solomon is warning his son about is, son, and it's one of the first things he says, son, you need to think about where this is headed. Watch where you're going. And so he paints for him a very real scenario that might occur in his life. He says, my son, if sinners entice you, and they start telling you about all the things that you're going to do, all this adventure, let's go and we are going to be bad. I mean, we are going to be bad and we're not going to care. We're not going to care who hurts. We're not going to care who cries. We're going to enjoy being bad and we're going to get away with stuff. We're going to live a life of abandon. And so let's go shed innocent blood, they say. Let's go ambush somebody. Let's go and we won't be scared of anybody. We will swallow them alive like Sheol, even whole as those that go down into the pit. I mean, this is a group that's going to be bad and isn't going to care about anyone or anything except the fun that they're going to have. We're going to get rich, verse 13. We'll find all kinds of precious wealth. We'll fill our houses with spoil. I mean, this is going to be, we're going to make a lot of money, you and I together. Verse 15, he says, my son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path. Why does he use that path analogy? Because paths lead somewhere. Because ways go someplace. And the picture he's trying to portray for him is that this is not going to end well. This is not going to end well. You are going to go off the cliff. You are going to go into a pit. This is a train wreck, son. This is a train wreck. And it is going to have a bad ending to it. And so he describes to them that bad ending. He says, verse 16, for their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood. And he makes for him another analogy. He says it's useless to spread the net in the eyes of any bird. If you're wanting to trap a turkey, I mean, you don't go right in front of the turkey's nest, do you, where he hangs out, and start setting up whatever it is that you're going to do to trap him. Because even a little bird brain, sees what we're trying to do, right? Trying to set the trap. But he says this is how dumb we get in certain kinds of company. A bird understands when you're putting a trap out for him, but he says what's happening here is they are making a trap for themselves and they don't even see it. It's futile, he says, to lay a trap in front of any bird. But he says in verse 18, they lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. So are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of his possessors. What they don't see is where it is that they're headed. What they don't see is the consequences of their actions. I need to constantly be asking myself when I'm alone or when I'm with other people, where is this going? If we talk this way, if we act this way, if we do this way, if we walk this way, if we drive this way, if we keep down this path, what's going to be the result of that? Where is this headed? Where is this going to go? And if it's not going in a way that honors God, if it's not going in a way that's going to lead me closer to Him, and if I can't see, and hear that too, if I can't see where it's going, I need to get off the train. I need to run from that path and head and find another direction, because that ain't the right way. Where's this headed? I don't know how much trouble I could have avoided in my life if I just asked the question, where's this headed? Where is this going? And answered that question honestly. Jesus is making the same point in Matthew chapter 18. He's arresting our attention that when we are thoughtless about how we influence other people, that is not a good path. If I become for them a stumbling block because I'm not thinking about how my words affect them, if I'm not thinking about how my actions hurt them, if I'm not thinking about what I do and how that becomes something that either pushes them or pulls them in a bad direction, when I don't contemplate how my actions hurt, how my actions can trip other people, when I don't think about that, that is violent. That is violent action. And the Lord feels wrath when I don't think about how I influence others. And so Jesus says it would be better to suffer the death of drowning and not be able to release myself from it than to be thoughtless about how my actions affect other people. I need to think about where's this headed if I act this way, if I treat others this way. Ask the question, where is this going? Number 3, one of the things I need to do in minding the company that I keep is look at what I bring. Look at what you bring to a relationship. Look at what you bring to a community. Look at what you bring to a friendship. Look at that point as it's made by Solomon in Proverbs 1 in verse 14. It's an incidental point, but it's what happens in a group. They invite the young man, as he's painting the picture of these sinners that he could potentially fall in with. Verse 14, they say to him, "Throw in your lot with us. We shall have one purse. Let's all get all the money out of our bank account. Let's all throw it in together. We are family. We are one." And what's portrayed in this gang description of this crowd that's about to go out and do bad things together is something that's true of every community. We do bring something, don't we, to relationships? We bring our gifts, we bring our personality, we bring our strengths, we bring our money, we bring something to the relationship. And so they're all throwing in their lot together. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus is making the same point he's asking what we bring to relationships. What do we bring to the little children around us? What do we bring to people that we perceive to be little people? I mean, people that we influence. That's the little person or the child in that context, are those that are influenced by us. And so what do we bring to those relationships? Do we bring help or do we bring harm? There's a mathematics that applies to all our relationships. I mean, you either add something or you subtract something from relationships, don't you? We all either add value or we take away. We either multiply, we augment, we enhance a relationship, or we divide. So what are the mathematical signs in your relationships? Are they addition signs? Are they multiplication? Or is it subtraction? Do you take away from the people that you hang around with? Or do you divide? I mean, which is it? Sometimes folks sometimes folks just bring pessimism to a group. Whoever they're around, it's always, it has been always raining these last couple of weeks. But for some folks, it's raining even when the sun's shining, isn't it? I mean, it's always a dark cloud. I mean, it just follows them around. Some folks lead an Eeyore kind of existence. It's just always bad. And is that what you bring to a group? Do you bring pessimism? Do you bring sourness? Or do you bring some optimism? Do you bring some sunshine? Do you bring some light? Do you bring peace? Are you a peacemaker or are you a pot stirrer in relationships? Are you an encourager or are you a discourager? Do you enter into relationships with the mindset that I'm going to be the boss? That relationships, in whatever community you're a part of, you're going to rule, or do you come into relationships to serve? Do you add something or are you a drain? Sometimes folks just suck the life out of whatever relationship they're in. Are you a drain on others? Or do you bring something that blesses? Are you involved or are you aloof? Do you build up or do you destroy? When you show up, do folks start to get nervous? Because they're not sure what's going to happen? Do folks look for a reason to leave? Or when you come, do people feel at ease? Do they feel comfort? Are they glad that you're there? In Acts chapter 5, I'm sorry, it's not the right location. Look at Acts chapter, that's right, Acts chapter 5. It says, and I'm still wrong, Acts chapter 4. Acts chapter 4 and verse 36. It says, "And Joseph, a Levite of Cyprian birth, who was also called Barnabas by the apostles," which translated means son of encouragement, "and who owned a tract of land, sold it and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet." Barnabas had, that was not his real name, that was his nickname. Bar in Hebrew means son, and Nabas is a word that means consolation or comfort or encouragement. And so whenever you see a Bar name in the Jewish language, in the Hebrew language, that's always son of something. And so he is son of encouragement. Who was it that gave him that nickname? It was the apostles. He was called the son of encouragement by the apostles. His real name was Joseph, and they called him Barnabas. So he had does that say something about what Barnabas brought to a group? Yeah, he had a reputation. He made a name for himself. Literally, he made a name for himself. He earned this nickname because of the way that he behaved. He was called the son of encouragement. Now, question about that, was he the apostles' encourager or was he the people's encourager? Which was it? The apostles gave him the nickname. Was it because he encouraged them Or was it because he encouraged the people? I expect it's because he did both, don't you? He was the apostles' encourager and he was the people's encourager. It's just the way Barnabas was. He always encouraged. The thing that I love about Barnabas is that every time Barnabas shows up, things get better. Whenever Barnabas comes, it doesn't matter if it's Jerusalem, it doesn't matter if it's into the life of Saul when he's converted, or if it's going to Antioch, or if it's going to preach in Galatia, or if it's hanging out with John Mark. When you're around Barnabas, people just get better. People just get better. Because he just made it his habit. He just made it his habit to make people and places better when he was there. And so what do you bring to a community? What do you bring to relationships? Do you make things better or do you make things worse? Do you make things happier or do you make things sadder? Do you bless or do you curse? In minding the company that I keep, an important question for me is to ask is, what do I bring to this relationship? So what do you bring? That is not an accidental thing. That's a purposeful thing. I get to choose how I behave when I'm around people. I get to choose whether I bless or whether I'm a burden. And I need to choose to be a blessing. What is it that you bring? Number 4, plant yourself in company that helps you grow. If you're going to mind the company that you keep, you need to plant yourself in company that helps you grow. Paul modeled this. If you look at Acts chapter 9, and look with me at verse 26 of that context, Acts 9, verse 26. This is after Paul's conversion. It says that when he had come to Jerusalem, he was trying to associate with the disciples. And they were all afraid of him, not believing that he was a disciple. But Barnabas took hold of him and brought him to the apostles and described to them how he had seen the Lord on the road and that he had talked to him and how at Damascus he had spoken out boldly in the name of Jesus. And he was with them, moving about freely in Jerusalem, speaking out boldly in the name of the Lord. Paul was trying to be around good people. He was trying to associate with people that could help him. And I admire his courage in that, because his courage in that behavior, because you know what? Those people in Jerusalem, a lot of them Paul had hurt. I mean, some of them had sons that went to jail because of Paul. Or maybe were not living because of Paul. I mean, he had persecuted those people. And so some of them he had hurt, but he wanted to hang out with them because they were people he needed to be with. And when he was with them, he was blessed by that. He wanted to hang out with the Barnabases of the world. And so he was associating with the right kind of people. And why is that? Well, because we're influenced by the people that we hang out with. He wanted to plan himself with people that would help him grow. In Ephesians chapter 4, Paul makes that very point himself as he talks about our relationships in the family of God. He says the purpose for this relationship is edification. The purpose for this relationship that we have with other believers is equipping. Because we grow up together, and so we influence each other. So, are you purposeful? Are you thoughtful about the relationships that are in your life? And are you creating relationships that make you better? Relationships that help you grow. If you're a younger man, it's good to connect yourself to an older man who can give you some wisdom and some life experience. It's good to connect yourself to peers, to men who share your values. Not just any kind of peers, godly peers who support what you want to be for the Lord. We need to plant ourselves in company, in relationships that make us better. We need to be that kind of company. And when we are, it will do the other three things that we've talked about. I need to be with people who help me remember who I am, who remind me that I'm to be light, who remind me that I'm to be a son, who remind me that I'm to be a follower. I need to plant myself with people who are thinking about where's the train going? Where is this headed? Who are asking that question, who are prompting me to think about the future. That's why I need older, wiser men in my life who say, listen, don't go down that road. I've been that way, and there is nothing good down that path. I need those kind of influences in my life. I need influences in my life who are making me conscious about what it is that I bring, who are making me thoughtful about what I contribute, whether I add or whether I take away, whether I multiply or whether I divide. And so the simple admonition this morning is to mind the company that you keep. Think about how you are influenced, and think about how you influence others. Because who we hang out with and how we affect the people that are around us is a major contributor to our spirituality, to our walk with God. So be thoughtful about that. Be purposeful about that, so that God can be glorified in our character and in our walk and in the difference that we make for Him. Okay? If you're subject to the Lord's invitation this morning, if there's some change that you need to make in your life, then we would like to be good influencers in that decision. We'd like to help you with that choice. If we can help you be stronger, if we can help you be bolder, if we can help you in your walk because we pray together with you and we encourage you in that, we'd love to do that. If you need some prayers this morning, or if you're ready to commit your life as a disciple of the Lord, then we want to help you shine your light. We want to help you put on the Lord in baptism this morning. Whatever we can do to help you in your walk with Him. Won't you come as we stand and as we sing?